Today we're going to be looking at some of my favorite players you should be looking to buy or sell heading into week 6. Let's talk about that right now. Let's ride. Welcome back in. Welcome back in. So let's go ahead and get right into it. We're going to start off with our buys first, and we're going to start at the running back position. Let's talk about Miles Sanders, currently RB12, but on the season, he's handling over 70% of the opportunities. He was also this past week, he was 5th in routes run this past week against the Cardinals and saw 3 carries inside the 10. He just wasn't able to get it. He just wasn't able to score a touchdown, but he's been very efficient so far this year. 17th in yards after contact per attempt, 13th in missed tackles forced, and 4th in carries of 10 plus yards. Miles Sanders has been well exceeded expectations for people. And honestly, I still don't think it would cost as much as you would think to be able to acquire him. They have the 10th easiest remaining schedule as well for running back. So really like trying to get my hands on Miles Sanders if you can. He looks like he has his backfield on lock right now. And if he's going to start seeing more opportunities as a pass catcher as well, like he did this past week, then it'll be absolutely wheels up for Miles Sanders. So buy Miles Sanders while you can. Jonathan Taylor is the next guy I have on here, and he is RB31 right now. And listen, it has not been a great start to the year for Jonathan Taylor. He just missed this past week against the Broncos. He should be back probably this next week, though, but he's still handling 77% of the opportunities. He has 11% target share. He's averaging 20.3 carries per game, 4 targets per game, but he's only averaging 12.6 fantasy points per game. So people who drafted him likely aren't all that excited about the production that he's given them so far. But I do think better things are coming. He has the 12th easiest schedule remaining. And also, if you go back and remember last year, through the first 4 weeks, he started as like RB20, and this year he's RB22 through the first 4 healthy weeks that he had. And so it's a little bit reminiscent of last year. I think this offense kind of figures things out a little bit, much like they did last year over the second half of the season. So Jonathan Taylor isn't going to cost you as much as you would think to be able to acquire him because he struggled so much. So we'll talk about some players you might be able to sell him for later, but I do like trying to send out some offers for Jonathan Taylor because if people are upset with his production, especially coming off the injury, I think this could be a really good buy low situation for Jonathan Taylor. Next up, you have David Montgomery. He is RB38 on the season. Last week, he played 72% of the snaps. He had 16 opportunities compared to only 4 for Khalil Herbert. Now, listen, I think Khalil Herbert's the better running back between the two. But if he's going to get this type of usage, and we've now seen him have over 70% of the snaps in 2 of the 4 games that he's played this year. So he has the second easiest remaining schedule for running backs as well. So David Montgomery isn't going to cost you anything to be able to acquire. If you're needing some depth, needing some help at the running back position, maybe you lost Rashad Penny, maybe you lost Javonte Williams so far this year. David Montgomery could be a cheap source of production moving forward. Next up, we have Travis Etienne. He's RB36. He was one of my preseason guys that I absolutely loved this year. However, he has not started out the way that we were hoping he would, but I think better days are coming for Travis Etienne. Etienne played more snaps this week than James Robinson, 52% to 40% to James Robinson. He was also more involved as a pass catcher, so receiving 5 targets to only 2 to James Robinson, ran more routes, 27 to 16. He also ranks 13th in yards created per touch and 12th in yards per route run. The Jaguars also have the easiest schedule remaining for running back. So I think that we are going to see a shift here, and I think you could see them move forward with Travis Etienne as being the lead back here. James Robinson's still going to be involved, don't get me wrong, but Travis Etienne at RB36, people that drafted him in the 4th or 5th round are likely not very happy with Travis Etienne right now, and I think he is somebody you could definitely be looking to buy. So let's move over to wide receivers. If you need some wide receiver help, Jamar Chase starts off this list at wide receiver 13 right now, 12.1 fantasy points per game. However, he is 6th in total targets with a 28% target share. He has 32 catches for 342 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he hasn't scored more than 12.7 PPR points since week 1. The usage is definitely there. The Bengals have struggled to start this year, but I think they're definitely going to turn this thing around, and Jamar Chase is somebody that I would love to get my hands on, and is not going to cost as much to acquire. A.J. Brown is next up, wide receiver 11. They have the second easiest remaining schedule for wide receivers. He has a 32% target share, and he's 12th in targets. He's also 6th in targets from inside the 10, but he's only converted 1 of them so far. He's 10th in yards per route run. And Jalen Hurts on the season has been 18th in pass attempts, but he's 7th in accuracy rating and 5th in deep ball completion percentage. A.J. Brown hasn't put up a lot of monster production, but he's been pretty solid so far to start the year. So you might be able to try to acquire him as well. I think he is aligned to be an absolute monster over the rest of the season here. So love AJ Brown. And then you have Michael Pittman, who's wide receiver 29, one of my favorite wide receivers heading into this year. He's has seen 8 or more targets in every game but one so far this year. The Colts are also top 7 in pass attempts on the season, and they have the third easiest remaining schedule for wide receivers. But the only thing that I would say is that so far this year, this offense just does not look very good. Much like I talked about with Jonathan Taylor, I think if they can get this running game going and start to use some of the stuff like play action and stuff that they really want to use in Frank Reich's offense, I think it could make a lot of sense to try to go out and acquire Michael Pittman because he's wide receiver 29 right now. Hasn't really put up the production that people were hoping for. He has missed some time too, so that is also why he is a little bit lower. But Michael Pittman, he is the definite alpha in this offense between him and Alex Pierce. I think those are the two guys that you want from this passing game. And Michael Pittman right now. Next up, we have Jacoby Myers. I told you. You've been following this channel all offseason. You would know I talk so much about Jacoby Myers that Jacoby Myers was going to be a baller this year. Right now, he's wide receiver 38. That's because he's missed 2 games, but he has a 31% target share in this offense. He is top 18 in market share of air yards. He's averaged almost 10 targets per game, 20 receptions, 261 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, and he's second in yards per route run. He's also the 5th highest graded wide receiver for PFF. So Jacoby Myers is a guy that I absolutely love. He's rostered in less than 50% of ESPN and Yahoo League. If he's sitting out there, I am definitely trying to spend a lot of fab or a high waiver priority to acquire him. If you don't have him and he's on somebody's roster, I would be looking to acquire him. Again, another player that it's just not going to cost very much to go out and acquire Jacoby Myers. And what we're seeing from him isn't going away. He was a top 36 wide receiver last year. Wouldn't be surprised if he can stay healthy this year. If he could be a top 24 wide receiver this year. I think it's in his range of outcomes. Jacoby Myers is that dude. Lastly, I want to, before we wrap up the buys, I do want to hit on a tight end, Gerald Everett. He is tight end 8, coming off a down week where he only scored 1.2 PPR points. However, he is 10th in routes run on the season. He's 6th in market share of air yards, 6th in yards after the catch, and 15th in yards per route run on the season. He also has the 3rd easiest remaining schedule for tight ends, coming off a down week. And while Keenan Allen is going to come back and is going to eat a little bit into his production, into his targets, I think he's going to be a pretty safe bet on a week-to-week basis, probably to get 5 or 6 targets on most weeks. So really like trying to go out there and get Gerald Everett. Now let's go over to the sells list. And first off, we're going to talk about Leonard Fournette. He is RB7 on the season, but that is mainly because he just came off a monster per week. 35 PPR points for him this past week on 14 carries for 56 rushing yards and 1 touchdown, 10 receptions on 11 targets for 83 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. So you might be saying, why would I look to sell Leonard Fournette right now? Here's why. Over the last 2 weeks, we have seen his snap share dip. 61% of the snaps week 4 and 62% of the snaps week 5. We're really starting to see Rachaad White dig into his snap share here, and I think this could be a trend we see moving forward. They want to keep Leonard Fournette healthy. They don't want to continue using him like they did last year. He is an older running back. He is 27 years old. He has somebody that has dealt with a lot of injuries in his career, so to keep him fresh, I think this could be something we see moving forward, and I don't expect he's going to see 11 targets every single week. That's what really carried his production this week. So Rachaad White is a terrific pass-catching running back as well. So I think it might be time to try to look to sell Leonard Fournette if you can, and maybe look to acquire a couple of the guys that we talked about up top, because I think you could actually get him for a pretty nice price. RB7 coming off 35 fantasy points. It's not going to take much to be able to try to move him. And I think if you're a team that is maybe you have Leonard Fournette, but you're missing a lot in terms of other depth or other positions that you really need help with, and you're solid at other spots, I think Leonard Fournette could definitely be that guy that you could look to sell. Next up, Dalvin Cook. RB14 so far on the season, but he's coming off his best week that he had, 26.1 PPR points. The problem, he only played 57% of the snaps to Madison's 43%. And Cook handled just under 20 opportunities, where Madison handled 13. And so for me, what has made Dalvin Cook always such an elite play has been his usage that we see. Usually he's a guy that's getting 80% of the opportunities in a backfield. If that's going to slip, and this is going to turn into a little bit more of a committee approach, that's going to be a problem for Dalvin Cook moving forward. He hasn't really been utilized that much in the passing game. He only has 15 targets on the season as well. So with Dalvin Cook, if you can look to move him, and he still carries that name where people are going to love him and want to acquire him, especially coming off this big week. Again, another guy that you could probably put into a package, and maybe go look to acquire a Jonathan Taylor or something like that. So listen, Dalvin Cook, he is an older running back as well. He's aging. He is dealing with this shoulder injury, which is not going away, which is probably another reason why they want to limit his snap share and not have him be out here and handle 80+% of the opportunities in this backfield every single week because they're trying to keep him healthy. So Dalvin Cook is somebody that I think that I would be looking to sell moving forward. Next up, we have Marquis Brown. And again, wide receiver 6 on the season, 19.4 PPR points per game, 16th in target share. He has 38 catches for 417 yards and 3 touchdowns. The problem, DeAndre Hopkins comes back in a week. Once he comes back, he's going to take away this elite usage that he's seeing on a week-to-week basis. He's seen over 10 targets almost every single week of the season so far. That's going to change once DeAndre Hopkins comes back. He is going to dig into this opportunity. And so I think right now is the ultimate time to sell Marquise Brown. I don't think his stock is going to be any higher than what it is right now. And so Marquise Brown is a definite sell for me with DeAndre Hopkins looming. Lastly, we have Terry McLaurin. This is going to be somebody that you probably include in some sort of a package because he doesn't carry huge value. But I think for somebody that maybe is looking for a wide receiver, I think you could look to offload him. He's wide receiver 31 on the year. 11.7 fantasy points per game with a 16% target share. He is second in deep targets on the year, and he has top 10 in average depth of target, but he is 69th in yards per route run. And you would have thought this past week with both Jahan Dotson and Logan Thomas being out that he would have saw a rise in his target share. He didn't. Still only saw 16% of the target. Curtis Samuel has continued to lead this team in targets every single week of the season. And I think that is concerning. He all did 5 for 76, but he seems to be third in this team in targets on a weekly basis. So Terry McLaurin is not somebody that I think you can trust. They do have a good remaining schedule for wide receivers. They are top 5 in terms of wide receivers, in terms of strength of schedule for the remaining year for the wide receivers. But I just don't think you can trust Terry McLaurin. And I would take Terry McLaurin. I think you could trade him to somebody that had like Jacoby Myers, and you could pair him and maybe try to get a Jacoby Myers and maybe one more secondary piece on that. And I would be perfectly okay with doing so because I think Jacoby Myers is trending up where you have Terry McLaurin, who's just pretty much stagnant. 16% target share is not something we're looking for our wide receiver. And for a lot of people, he's probably your wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. So I, I would just much rather have somebody different because I just don't think you're going to be able to trust them on a week-to-week basis. So that being said, let me know in the comment section below what you think about this list. Who did I miss? Who did I get right? Who did I get wrong? Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button for future content. Be sure to jump into our Discord, absolutely free. You can find that in the link in the description down below. We will catch you on the next one. Bye.